tell us about Coda. Tell us about what you see it as, and for anybody who's not familiar with it, and then tell us about your role there.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, after leaving Workspace, I spent a year working just on a documentation team at Google. I love documentation, and I love kind of empowering people in the workplace. And having done a year of documentation, I then discovered Coda, and I was also looking for a fully remote position. And Coda for me really brings back what I think is a lot of the best aspects of Workspace and AppScript. It really kind of like takes a new approach, I think, to some of the things I used to solve with AppScript and tries to then bring those into a product. And so for me, I found it as I don't know, it felt like going back into a comfortable pair of jeans that you hadn't worn in a little while. And so for me, although it's a different company, obviously, the ethos running through it was really spot on to what I kind of believe in and also what I experienced on the AppScript team. But yeah, so Coda, if you haven't used it before, it's a new kind of doc. They call it a new doc for teams. And another way that kind of rings true with me is it's about building a doc as powerful as an application. And so as someone who did a very successful presentation on going from spreadsheets to applications, it's a product that I think tries to do that natively within one product with a little less friction between it. And I'm happy to show you some of the things I use Coda for, some of the docs I've built so far, if that helps illustrate it.
I think it would be awesome. I mean, I think it's a pretty cool tool, but if folks haven't seen it, hearing it from you would be great. So please do.
Right. Cool. So yeah, what Coda is, you can sign up with a Google account, and it's got a free tier. And to get started, all you have to do is coda.new, just like sheets.new if you're used to that pattern before. And it'll launch you right into a brand new Coda doc. And one of the core ideas of Coda is that we want to make it a document first. So we're not trying to build an application editor with a database tab and the rest of it. We're really focusing on people who want to use a document. And so you start with a blinking cursor on a white page, right? Pretty familiar. I think the one interesting thing about Coda, and I mentioned this in a tweet, is it kind of feels like sites, sheets, and docs all put together. And the aspects of that is that you have a title here, and you have a place for text, and you can just write paragraphs, and you can do a bulleted list. That all feels very doc-like. And then you can also add tables. And so tables in Coda are kind of like embedded spreadsheets. And so a table is a structured data table. So I think it's more akin maybe to a Google table, the Google Tables product, where there are strongly typed columns. So each column has a type that you choose, including like a text, a number, a date, and then every row in that column has that same data type. So it's more structured than a spreadsheet, but it is a grid within a freeform text area. But then on the left, you also have kind of a sites-like nav structure. So you can add pages and you can add subpages. And so you end up with something that feels, it could just be a single doc where it's just one page within your doc. It's just text. It feels like a Google Doc. It could just be a table within a doc. It feels like a spreadsheet. It could just be like a site where it's a bunch of like a wiki. But I feel like combining all three of those is where you end up seeing a lot of value, where you're using structured data in combination with textual information in kind of a nav layout that helps people kind of orient themselves. And so I think what it does that's nice is it takes away that first decision, which is whenever I was working with Workspace, it was like, do I type sheets.new, docs.new, sites.new? And I think there were some times where I started with a doc and I'm like, oh man, I really want to show this complex grid. So then I go over to a sheet and I'm like, oh, but how do I make it discoverable for people on my team? And then you end up building a site out of it. And I think what they tried to do here, we're calling it an all-in-one doc, is try to bring all of those different facets into one editing interface. And I think that cutting out that one decision is a nice little decision to take off your plate when you want to start writing something down.
Absolutely. So you built a lot of tools in the past out of necessity. What are some of the things you've already built here? Can you share some of your common samples?
I see the cats.
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to see some cats.
Yeah. The cats one is goofy. I'll start with ones that maybe are a bit more. So one thing we're doing right now, my wife and I, is we're trying to plan out Santa's gift list for our 3 children. This was a spreadsheet every previous year, and this year I decided to try it in Coda. And so this is a doc I've been working on. We haven't gotten very far yet in what we're going to buy for the kids, but it's a structured table of the actual gift ideas. And then the 4 column here, this is a lookup into the people table. So I have a list of people. Those are my 3 children. And then this is a lookup. And so you can just click a drop down and select the children. And it's a multi-select, so I can choose multiple people. And then a link to what we're thinking about, a price, and then a status. And the status is a lookup into a status column here. And then these, all this other data is kind of magically put together. So the spent column here is a formula. Coda has its own formula language, which is similar to, but different than the kind of Sheets and Excel formulas that came before. But I can use it in a table such that I can say, okay, sum up the gifts that per child cost from this gifts table, and then figure out how much that child and how much I actually spending on that child, and then also kind of like do a lookup into that table to say, okay, get the gifts for this child where the status is confirmed, to see that I actually purchased it. And so what's a little bit different about Coda is that the formulas are the same for the whole column. It's kind of like an automatic copy down, I guess, if you're used to that copy down syntax in Sheets, but it's kind of a forced automatic copy down. So on any of these cells, I can hit equals and see the same formula, and it applies equally.
So let me ask you a question, Eric. You're obviously extremely technical, but this feels very approachable. I know the term you use in your community is makers. Who is this tool for? Is it anybody? Is it non-technical, totally non-technical? Like, how far do you think it can be pushed? Who's your audience?
Yeah. So definitely the audience is people who want to use a doc. So we say that we want to succeed at the easy things that a doc can do in order to have your trust for the harder things. Mm-hmm. So we don't want to land you right into this table lookup stuff. This is what I use it for because I come from a more technical background, but you can just author a wiki or a project plan or something that just requires you to just do typing and no formulas at all. And so we want to start by making sure it's familiar and friendly for that audience, but then have these growth areas for more advanced use cases. And so the ones I'm demoing today are more advanced because that's what I've been writing, but you can definitely just start with text and images and paste them in and just work on it like a Google Doc or a site.
And does Coda provide templates for people looking for a quick start?
Yeah, when you're creating a new doc, you have some templates as well as you have in-doc templates. So if I have a page here and I already have some content and I want to add, for instance, like a voting table, I can just drag this in and it gives me kind of this little chunk of predefined content that uses tables and in buttons and formulas and other sorts of first-class widgets we have, like a little vote ticker thing to kind of make a little reusable block. And you can both use ones in the public gallery, or if you have an organization, you can define your own custom templates. So if you have a certain pattern, we call them rituals at Coda, you can turn that ritual into a template and then say, okay, every time you create a product brief, make sure you drag in this template that is how we vote on the success or failure of the product or whatever it is.
So this is kind of like a segue to like a knowledge expert or someone that has created something with a little more depth in the product, but they can easily share. It's like almost like a library, so to speak, right? From the AppScript world.
But I think it's harkening back to the old days of AppScript, the script gallery. I think it was something that kind of really leveraged this pattern of the people who have the ability and the people who want to consume it and connecting them. I think add-ons did that in a different way. But yeah, this idea of like, especially within a business, and that's the thing I know, Charles, we talk about all the time back in the day, was wanting to make it so that, someone on a team or within a company can really leverage, there's going to be a handful of people that have the technical skill within an organization, but leveraging them to build things that then the whole team or company can use.
Right. No, absolutely.
What about collaboration? I see there's a share option up there.
Yeah. So it's very good. It feels very familiar. I don't know why my share is disabled right now. I shared this from a different account. I should share this from, I think, my real account where I'm doing the planning. But yeah, it has a share dialog. It's going to feel very familiar. You type in a person's name, give them edit or read access. So it is collaborative, and it works like a Google Doc. You can have multiple cursors flying around editing simultaneously. I think that's Google Docs and Sheets set the table stakes there when it comes to collaborative editing, and I think Coda has lived up to those expectations. One other thing in here is, I'll show you. Let me flip to one other example. This is a more complicated example. This one I put into the mobile view because this is actually what I use to go grocery shopping each week. I do the meal planning and cooking in our house, and Before I was using Keep to kind of keep track of my meal plan. So I'd walk into Trader Joe's, my grocery store of choice, and I call it jazz. I kind of like see what's available, what strikes me, what's out there. And I kind of just like come up with either new ideas for something to eat or picking something up from my memory bank that I used to cook before. And I would write it down in a Keep note. But it became a little hard to track if I actually had all the ingredients. So like I'd pick up the tomatoes, come up with an idea for a tomato dish, but then forget to get the thing I needed for it later. And so I tried building out this Coda Dock, which is very app-like, which actually in the mobile view is what I use now when I go grocery shopping. So I'll go to the Trader Joe's and I'll hit this little plus button and I'll say, oh, I want to make, there's pork tacos. It's what autocompletes for something I've made before. And I want to make a corn salad, and corn salad's not listed. So I'll click corn salad. And then it tells me you need to have a vegetable. Now, corn salad's my vegetable, but it doesn't know that it's a vegetable yet. So down here, it says, oh, you have an action item. You need to tell us about corn salad. I'll say, all right, the ingredients for corn salad are corn, which is, I've also never added corn before, and tomatoes. And I can say that maybe that's a fall dish, in my opinion. And this was something where this is not built in. This is not hard-coded. This is anyone can make any set of criteria or metadata that they want to capture.
So far, this is no code, correct?
This is no. So this is not me writing any code. This is just me using Coda formulas and Coda native objects. But now it says you got to tell us what corn is, and I can say, well, corn is a vegetable, and then I'm done. And so now if I go back here, it says, okay, pork tacos and corn. It has a meat, a veg, and a carb component. Now I have 3 kids. If I don't have some sort of bread or carb, they won't eat anything for dinner. And so this is my criteria. I came up with, I want to have a quick and easy way to see, am I missing a component? Did I forget to add a protein? Did I forget to add a vegetable to a given night's dinner? And then, I can do some analysis where I can say, okay, I've got 4 meals planned so far. 2 of them are meatless. The 2 that I have are half pork and beef. So I don't have a whole week where we're just eating pork and it gets boring. And I try to have some meatless meals each week because I'm trying to reduce carbon footprint a little bit. And so kind of like I've kind of come up with an interface that kind of tailors this meal planning to exactly how I think about and walk through Trader Joe's.
This is super geeky, and I love it.
Go first.
One of the things with Sheets is, you could you could open up a sheet so anyone could make a copy of it. Is it, if people wanted your meal planner, is there an easy way for them to get that?
Yeah, once I publish it, and I think I've been using it now for about like 8 weeks. I wanted to kind of walk the walk with it a little bit before I started to share it with the world and say that this is a good way to meal plan. But once I do, I can publish it. All Coda docs can be published to our gallery. And that's where I published the infamous cat doc that was referenced earlier, which is my maker profile here at Eric Koleda has this published doc. And so someday there will be another little square here for Eric's meal planning doc. But this doc and any other doc you publish, you can just click copy doc at the top, and then you'll have your own copy that you can play with. And so once I get to the point where I'm happy with it, I'm gonna publish it. The cat one, which now that I have open, just is a doc. Once again, doesn't use any code, just formulas and Coda natives. Kind of cycles through random cat pictures at the interval of your choice, and you can have a little slider widget to slide it up and down, and then it has a little countdown section here. And so yeah, that was me playing around with, and then I did a deep dive into essentially how this all works with Coda formulas, because this was me learning Coda formulas, and I also just want to kind of share my learning experience.
So that's super awesome. That's impressive. You can do so much sans code, but you are a developer advocate at Coda.
That's right.
So there's got to be opportunities for developers to do more. Can you just tell us a little bit about the development landscape?
Yeah.
And what people can do, what's available? Like, give us the pitch for developers and tell us how we can build on this.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, Coda's idea is that you shouldn't need to be a developer to build good things, but also we want to invite developers in to kind of take it even further. And so what we had previously was a Coda REST API, and this was, I think, what you'd expect for a REST API. List your pages, list your tables, get data from a table, make an update to a row in a table. Pretty straightforward API for pulling data in and out of a Coda doc. And it's used by some individual customers, of course, for what they need, as well as some partners. So Zapier, for instance, has an integration with Coda. And in fact, I've actually built just today to test it out, a Zap that pushes from Google Sheets into a Coda doc. And I think you could probably do the inverse as well. And so the REST API, I think, is a good kind of table stakes for any sort of application these days. But what we just launched, or not quite launched, what we just previewed a couple weeks ago at our block party event is what is our new kind of plug-in add-on infrastructure that we call packs. And so a Coda pack allows you to extend the building blocks within Coda. So we have buttons in Coda. Now you can kind of build your own custom buttons. And we have tables in Coda, and now you can build your own custom tables that pull data from an outside source, and a couple other integration points as well. And so it's in a limited beta at the moment, but I do have some packs that I've built that I can show you if you want to get a sense of what they look like. In the wild. So I think what's different about packs and AppScript is that while AppScript is extremely, it has no boundaries, I feel like, right? You can do anything, anywhere, with a sheet, without a sheet, it's very much just a blank slate. Packs is launching with a bit more of a narrow focus. So it's like, your code runs when the building block runs it, right? And those building blocks are varied, but it's a bit more about purely extending Coda versus being more of a general purpose kind of coding environment that I think AppScript in some ways is. And so there's a simple hello world here where you add your own custom formula to the Coda formula language. This is like the reason that AppScript was built. I did an interview with Mike Harm, the creator of AppScript, for its 10-year anniversary. He's like, I just wanted my own formulas, right? And so I feel like that's always where you start, and that's something that Packs does as well. So you can create a hello world formula here that put in a name, and it'll say hello to that name. And you can use it in tables where formulas are supported. You can use it in the canvas where formulas are supported. It's just a standard way to add new functionality. And there's also the ability to have structured data. So instead of returning just strings, you can return these chips, these rich objects in Coda. So a chip is like a bunch of different information bundled together. And so formulas can do more than just return simple values. As well as formulas can integrate with outside systems. So this is the Todoist to-do tracking app. And we built a sync table with their API. So this table, rather than being editable, all the data here is being pulled from Todoist on a regular cadence, although I haven't refreshed it. This is not on auto refresh at the moment. But it pulls the data from Todoist and then brings it into your table. And so this, I think, a lot of AppScript usage is about taking the report and bringing it into a sheet, taking the list and bringing it into a sheet. And this is kind of just a productized way to do that kind of normal pattern you see in app scripting sheets, where when you're writing the code for a pack, instead of saying, put this value into A1 and put this other value into B1, you just say, here's the name and here's the description, and it just goes into the right columns. Coda, the product, manages how your data flows into the doc versus in AppScript and in a sheet. You have to be a little bit more pinpointing and say, okay, I want this value in this row and this value in this column. So it's a little bit of a different paradigm, but I think achieves a lot of what I usually use AppScript for as well.
Got it.
And then I did build a special pack, and I teased it to you earlier, but I built a pack before I joined earlier today, specifically for this call. And so I'm going to open the surprise now. Bum, bum, bum. I built an AppScript Pulse pack.
Very nice.
So I took the AppScript Pulse RSS feed, and I built a pack around it that pulls in every post that has been posted on. I have the full list down here in all posts, 604 posts. You've been incredibly prolific in AppScript. But so then what I've done is I pulled it in, and then I built different tables off of it. So this table is in our card view. And so you can click a card and then view things full screen and get more details about a given post. And then I also went down here and very quickly just choose an option to display a word cloud. And so this is a word cloud from all of the titles of your posts, filtering out these words, which apps and script. If you include those, that's the only thing you see. Everything else is microscopic. But you can see, for instance, data inspiration is big. Shout out to Yagus the Toad, who produces a lot of great content. Yeah. And then you can also display that same data in a calendar view. These are all native views in Coda. And so you can see when you've posted your recent things. You can see that Saturday is not a particularly busy day, I guess.
I've got life, Eric. I go running.
Yeah, it's good. It's a step away. Even as much as you love AppScript, it's good to step away. And then I also just showed what else I could do here. So with Coda tables, you can create these, inline formulas. So this is a formula here that counts how many things are how many things have been synced. And then this is an inline control that I've tied up to this table. So I can say, okay, pick a category. And for instance, I found out there's actually an Eric Koleda category. And I can filter down to just see now the posts about things that I created. And this was a good walk down memory lane, including way back to 2019, my Halloween script on calculating the optimal Halloween trick-or-treating route, which is, I think, perfect timing for that one to come back into play.
Well, I use that first one in the list.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, so this pack, how much code behind this?
Yeah, I can show you right now. So one of the things they did with packs is when they first started building an app, they only had a command line experience, but I think they pretty quickly realized in order to get citizen devs, the average person who doesn't work full-time as a developer, you need to have an in-browser experience. And so they actually really looked to AppScript for inspiration on like what does a good in-browser code editing experience look like. And this is what we have, what we call our pack editor as part of our pack studio. And as you can tell, it is very familiar. If you've been working, especially in the newer AppScript IDE, I think it uses the same underlying technology here for the editor. And overall, a very similar experience. You type your code, no downloads, no provisioning. You hit build, and then it builds your code. So I think, well, AppScript is just a save command. There is an extra step here to do a build, but within a couple seconds, your code is built and then ready to use in your dock. And that's in total, awesome. This pack was 91 lines, and it would have been a little bit less because we're supposed to parse the XML for you into a JSON automatically, but I found a bug. And so I actually had to parse some of the XML myself, which resulted in this incredibly nasty regular expression. But overall, it wasn't that much. You basically just, instead of having the URL fetch, we have this thing called context.fetcher.fetch, method and URL, and then you get the results, and then you do some stuff. And then for the sync table, this is the key right here, is that I say, okay, here's the title, link, description, and I'm pulling these out of the XML. And then earlier, I defined a schema that said, for this table, here's the schema. It has a title, link, description, categories, and published. And so I just kind of define the shape of my data. I populate that shape, and then Coda, the platform, is turning it into this actual table that we see down here, which then powers the other interfaces.
That's awesome. So there is a lot less to actually write. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was on the AppScript team, I tried building a general purpose library for kind of like syncing data shapes into grid cells. And it's complicated, especially since users can rearrange columns. Like the logic there is non-trivial. And so here, the engineering team at Coda took the case of solving all of that complex logic around syncing rows and columns and the rest of it, and allows the developer to just focus purely on the data and then have it kind of just show up in the right place.
So for the AppScript developer, this should feel very approachable, very almost logical, right? Although in some cases, just less effort to do certain things. Is there anything you specifically have done to kind of help join the two flavors, Workspace and Coda? Is there any, have you seen any samples where folks reach across and pull data from one? Or
yeah, we have some solutions architects on our team who, their job is to kind of demo how to solve real problems. That's what they come from a background of let's solve a problem, not let's build an application. And so Al, one of the solutions architects at Coda, he was a big AppScript user before joining Coda, and since he joined, has written a lot of content around how to accomplish things with Coda, including how to connect it up to AppScript. And so he wrote a very nice tutorial on how to sync data to and from Coda to Sheets back and forth using AppScript.
Oh,
so
neat.
Yeah, and so Zapier is one way, and then if you have a more targeted use case, these scripts are another way you can go about doing a sync. And so he wrote all of his code is available in GitHub, so you can go and download it. It uses Coda's REST API, and Coda even has one of the things we launched early on, much to my happiness, was an AppScript library that wraps the Coda API. So you don't even need to do the URL fetch calls. You can just use the library shown here in this section, put that library ID in, and then you can use AppScript's native libraries to kind of interface with your Coda Dock. And so it makes the actual code that's inside of these a lot smaller. You'll see it's just, this is for some complicated sync logic, 250 lines of code, and you can pretty much copy and paste it and fill in some of the placeholders above.
That's pretty neat.
And we have Alchen watching. I've featured some of Al's work on AppScript Pulse as well, just to bring it full circle.
Yeah, he's done a lot before I even joined, and so I'm happy that he laid some of the groundwork for, I think, kind of bridging the gap between these two communities.
So let me ask a question from kind of my selfish perspective, because I am still on the developer relations team here at Google on Workspace. Now that you're meeting a new community, you've got a new tool. Is there anything you're doing differently to approach the way you reach people, the way you kind of show off the product of the work? Is there anything you learn from the old days, so to speak, that you're doing the same or doing new? Or is there any advice you give somebody who's trying to actually educate and reach and excite people about a technology?
Yeah, I mean, having these developer interfaces not be fully launched yet means I haven't had the chance to kind of put the put a plan fully into action, right? We're still at the trying to get it launched phase. But certainly I plan to leverage a lot of the learnings that I got while working at AppScript, specifically around like, how do you reach a citizen developer? You can't show up at a major dev conference and expect to run into them next to a booth. They're back at home doing work, right, on their regular job. Then we also had a lot of conversations already about the importance of sample code and how, I think it's true for all developers, but I think even more so for citizen developers. You want to optimize for copy paste. You want to optimize for quick solutions. You want to show a lot more than you tell. And so I think a lot of the things I learned while working on the AppScript team and in Workspace about how to kind of reach this audience and give them the right tool, I'm planning to bring forward, but I haven't had a chance to fully deploy it yet.
So you have a cats sample. Do you have a mail merge sample?
I do know some people have used native Coda without code to do a mail merge, and so it is possible.
It's
although
coming.
I think it's there's still some enhancements to come there to make it even friendlier. No, I haven't built a mail merge, but one of the first things I did when I joined Coda, I think you may be happy to know, is that the Coda kind of corporate directory is a Coda Dock that we do. We really do walk the walk when it comes to using Coda. But as someone who was new to the company, I was kind of constantly going between my email, being like, "Wait, who's this person?" Tab over to the roster, look them up. Tab back to the calendar. Who's that person? Tab to the roster. And so what I built was a Workspace add-on that used the Coda API to pull data out of that roster doc that we had and display it in the sidebar in Gmail and Calendar. And so for me, it felt like the perfect marrying of like these two tool sets. And I shared it with some of the people who joined the same week I did. Like, oh, this is so useful. Like, I'm always wondering who I'm talking to. I have no idea. And so for me, it felt great to kind of bring that aspect that I loved about workspace development into a company that hadn't really embraced that part of it yet.
Can we expect that modern cat sample to be actually put in? And I don't mean the cats, but I mean that one. Are you actually going to publish that one in the marketplace? It sounds like that's something folks outside of Coda would probably be interested.
Yeah.
Any Gmail users out there. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about Coda is that, it's really just a pile of Legos, right? Like Coda starts out with a blinking cursor and a lot of interesting capabilities, but you have to decide what to build. And so the specific roster doc that Coda uses and the information that's in it and how it's structured is not something that, necessarily that add-on would work with any other roster doc out there. And so that one was a little bit of a one-off development. And I think there are times we're thinking about, can we do like with some of those other published docs, maybe you could copy a roster and then copy this workspace add-on or have some sort of templatized version of it.
Right.
I think there are options there, but it's certainly a product aimed at, not being one size fits all, but being something that you build and tailor exactly to your specific needs.
That sounds awesome.
In terms of support, people just getting started with Coda, any recommendations where they can go get some help if they need it?
Yeah, that we have a coda.io/learn, and one of my colleagues, Maria, does an amazing set of video courses and docs that walk you through how to build with Coda, how to do formulas, how to design your tables, how to work with the schemas that we have. And so that set of learn content that we have, it's called the Learn Doc. It's out there somewhere, as well as there's videos on the Coda YouTube channel. That's a great place to get started, just to kind of learn the fundamentals of how a Coda Doc works. And I think understanding that is going to be important for understanding the eventual release of our PAX ecosystem, because you're extending Coda fundamentals. So it's important to first know Coda fundamentals.
Looks easy enough. So, where's next? What's some of the next big things that you're working on as part of your developer advocacy reach campaign? But besides some more great samples.
Yeah, right now we're pretty heads down on the PAX team, just trying to get our documentation ready, improving our debugging. As you know, when you have a completely cloud development environment, all the debugging has to come from the platform, right? There's no just console logs you can just go look at. And so we're working on improving some of those core fundamentals so that when we hand it to citizen developers, they're not just stuck or lost. And so that's kind of where all the effort's at right now. I think once we're ready for a GA, our focus then is going to be really to get it out there a bit more. And so we're talking about maybe doing some hackathons.
Hackathon. Did you say packathon?
Yeah, so we did have hackathons are a big part of Coda culture. We already had an internal hackathon, which we did call Packathon. If the name is too good to pass up.
Yeah.
And so, we want to do some packathons to get people excited to build packs and to kind of like explore. There will be a marketplace as well. So in addition to building packs for your local use case, you could also publish a pack to the world and eventually charge money for it too. And we're hoping people can, make a side business or maybe even a full-time business off of building packs.
Yeah, that would be interesting to see what that third-party kind of partner play would be. Absolutely. I have a question for you. I know we're getting close on time, and before I ask the silly question, if anybody has questions for Eric with his AppScript hat on, that would be awesome, as well as his new Coda hat on. This is a simple question. I'm just curious. What do they call people who work at Coda? What's the term there?
Yeah, I think every company needs to have a term nowadays. It's simply just a codin. So you throw an N on the end. So we're codins.
Codins.
Codins. Yeah.
Not Codian, just Codin.
No, not Codian, just Codin. Yeah.
So when you're at work, you're coding.
Yeah, I'm a codin, I guess.
Coding.
Yeah.
You're coding on coding. Awesome. Okay, so any questions?
I've got a lot of love for you.
A lot of great love, including some other Googlers.
Yeah.
Annie Rude has come in and said hello, and some other folks. There you go. I have a question for you, and I know you thought long about it, and I think I wanted to wrap on asking this, and I kind of do this most times. I talk to somebody who's thought long and hard about this. Where do you see AppScript going, or where would you like to see AppScript going? I know you haven't been thinking about that for a while, but you used to be one of the more retrospective people on it, or introspective people on it. What do you think the path should continue to be for that? I know it's kind of a loaded question. I know it's kind of an opinion.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, certainly when I talked to Mike Harm at the 10-year anniversary, and he told me about the early days and inspiration for AppScript, what really struck with me was he was feeling the exact same thing that makes me so excited about AppScript, which is seeing users who don't consider themselves developers, who maybe don't even think they can code that well, who then are able to like do this thing that saves them X hours a week or saves their team all of this time and effort by automating document copying or some other mundane rote task, right? That kind of empowerment of the individual, that's kind of where it started. And it's something for me that's very powerful. And I think AppScript, through some of those turns and tectonic shifts, was thinking more about marketplaces and scale and partners. And that's an important aspect of any platform as well. But I think through some of that, it may have lost some of the focus on the individual and solving individual granular needs. And I know that when we left the PM, he was kind of trying to bring it back to that roots, right? To kind of go back to the world of you have a spreadsheet and you have a process and you want to make it better. And I think focusing in on that use case for me, like it's why I use AppScript. It's why I love AppScript. It's what makes me, I get so much joy when I see someone kind of cross into the world of coding that didn't think they could, right, and then like come out the other end feeling like a wizard, right? Those moments I think are really magical, and I think it's what inspires the love of AppScript. Right? It's a community that doesn't just build things. There's really a lot of love, and I think the show and a lot of the other, community that's out there are based around those feelings that come out of that moment that you have with AppScript. And so I think refocusing in on that would be where I'd like to see. And like it has all the nuts and bolts. It's just about kind of taking some of those rough edges off, smoothing over some of those workflows. And I think just focusing on that portion of the community, I think is really strong.
Absolutely. And I can just tell from watching you talk about Coda for 30 minutes that you also have that same kind of excitement and love for it, which A, obviously is probably what pulled you over there in the first place, but B, it makes it so much easier. I think all of us, including the folks listening in, one of the joys of doing what we do is we do turn something, hard into simple, or something, complicated into automated, or whatever, whatever the story is. But it is fun to kind of achieve those things, and also, achieve it with less. And I think that's what the beauty is with AppScript. Clearly with Coda is you can, do more with less and make it easier for folks to get to a conclusion that solves a problem so they can go on to the next one. And I think it's probably why most of us do what we do with this.
Yeah,
So,
totally.
Absolutely. So we've got a couple of good comments in there. Again, including some advice for AppScript, which is great. Pablo, thanks for that. We got that one. I duly noted. But I want to pause and just say, first of all, Eric, great to see you again. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much for all your years in the community. Thank you for the fact that you still occasionally are still in the community, and I think you won't be forgotten anytime soon or anytime ever. But on behalf of my current team and Googlers, thanks so much for all you've done. Stephen Martin, I know he's been an inspiration, so I'll let you guys chime in there.
Well, I, as you were talking about the journey of the AppScript developer, that was me 11 years ago, not non-coder. Look at me now. Not coding, but talking about coding. But
I remember at Google I/O seeing you there, and I think maybe it was a document service or something like that you're demoing. So I appreciate all your advocacy for the AppScript and Google Workspace and all. So thanks.
Yeah, no, thank you both. I said it's folks like you, and I did it as a job. I also loved it, but it was also my job. Folks like you who kind of do all this this effort to kind of bring the community even further and help people, and like doing support for AppScript is, I think, it was challenging, but having a community of people on the forums that were helping all sorts of new users come in and solve their problems. It was a welcoming, friendly community, and it's folks like you who kind of really support it and make it it's not just a text editor for writing code. It's kind of a whole ecosystem. It was because of folks like you that kind of keep that ecosystem alive and healthy.
And we have to thank you for Totally Unscripted. If it wasn't for the Google AppScript Unscripted show.
Yes, that was my work in Adobe Photoshop many years ago.
So for those that are unfamiliar, this was a YouTube show that I think, Eric, you're one of the staple hosts, or Aaron, I think, featured quite often with you. A monthly show, just doing Q&A, talking about the latest features in Google AppScript. So several years later, Bruce McPherson got in touch with me and said, let's do this show again. So that's why we're here, and we're very grateful for you joining us today.
Yeah, you've taken it and you've produced way more episodes than I think we ever did. You're now own the brand, I'm pretty sure.
Well, yeah, there is no royalty check for you. I'm sorry. So in terms of next week, we're back at our regular slot on the Wednesday, and it's quite fitting. We'll be looking at some of the 600 AppScript Pulse contributions, but we'll be selecting a couple of the good ones, and hopefully getting the offers as well to come along and talk about those. So that's next week, next Wednesday. So thanks everyone for joining in the YouTube chat, your comments and your positive messages for Eric. We're very grateful to have those, and I think we'll call it a wrap. And thanks again, Eric, for joining us. Happy scripting, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye now.